we're going to talk about some nerdy stuff today. Persuasion nerdery. It's great fun. It's how I basically got really excited about copywriting. Once I read Cialdini's Influence and saw all of these like amazing studies going on, and I was doing my master's degree in communications and was also starting to like get into studies that like academics were doing. Anyway, so today we're talking about basically that stuff, but not like generally, specific to offer optimization. So we're getting into that. Okay, you should be seeing my screen now, nerding out with temporal framing. Yeah. If you're here, it's because you're a little bit nerdy about this stuff. So welcome. Question for you. Quick reaction in chat, please. You're playing the lottery. Which odds of winning do you prefer? A, odds are 9 in 100, or B, odds are 1 in 10. And my Q&A, my Q.
Wow. Yeah, we're pretty mixed here between B's and A's. Someone said, I know it's B. B, A's. Yeah.
Yeah. And now we've shown here, because I had to go out of mode in order to see this. There's a lot of B's. However, studies have found that people are more likely to say A, 9 in 100, which stuns me. I'm like, what are you talking about? Clearly that's 9% versus 10%, but that's not how our little brains think. I know, hey, Joanna, another Joanna, says they don't know math. I know, right? But copyhackers are smart. Yes. But yeah, I found this very interesting. So this was from a study. I was writing a blog post on this, or at least planning one. And I found this quite interesting. Now, what's going on here? The denominator 100 is bigger. That's it. That's all our lizard brain needs. So when you look at the two side by side and you have to make a quick reaction, 100 is bigger than 10, and your crazy little lizard brain is like that one. Without looking at what's up top, it's just comparing the numerals that it sees and like zooming in on the big guy without any thought as to what's above it. Now, there are exceptions to that. Not every single person in the world in that study chose 9 out of 100, but the vast majority did. Interesting. Numerals are shortcuts. Now, nerdy term, numerosity heuristic. That is a thing. You should look it up because we only have so much time, but it really means numerals are shortcuts. When you see numbers, you see 8.9 here, you assume there's some level of meaning there, and it gives you a little comfort. Maybe there's an 8.8 around, maybe there's a 9 coming up. But we look at something like that, and any numeral, and we use it as a shortcut. So that's part of what we're talking about today. Even more likelihood of you choosing A would be if you drew more attention to those numerals, 100 versus 10. Now we're going to see a lot more people choose A versus B because there's extra attention on those big numbers. So numerosity effect is also more powerful when attention is drawn to numerals. If we made them bigger, pink, we had arrows pointing at them, all that kind of stuff. And now this is what we know as marketers, right? You're like, well, yeah, of course. if you point at things and make it bigger, people will pay attention to it, particularly though with numerals, what that means for them and how that can help more people make decisions faster. So what you're going to see today is probably going to reinforce a lot of what you already believe to be true. And now we're going to give it studies to support it. We're going to give it terms you can use, and we're going to give you takeaways where you can say, oh, in this case, do this. In that case, do that. Okay, so that's what we're going to get into. This is drawing attention. Did you like that? I'm going to do it again. Draw attention to a number. There you go. Animations. You're welcome. Okay, temporal framing. What does it mean to begin with? So we were talking about that whole numerosity thing, and that has a lot to do with temporal framing because we're talking in terms of numbers when it comes to like time. So framing effect, what's framing? Framing is what we do. This is how it's defined, but it's basically we have to frame the information that we're putting in front of people so that they can consume it best and ideally consume it in a way that we want them to, so that they walk away agreeing with us, saying yes to our offer. That's why we frame things instead of just like throwing pure stated facts on the screen and going like, everybody will logically understand this, which we know they won't, right? Temporal framing effect then is all about framing. So organizing, showing information in a certain way, but doing so with time as the primary factor, difference, whatever it is that you want to call it. Temporal framing is framing with time as the factor. Okay, so what do we do with that? We want to use temporal framing and numerosity effect in order to frame an optimized offer. So you already need an optimized offer. Cool, we're all working on that. Sometimes it's hard to optimize an offer. So using these persuasion tricks, which is not a trick, it's how people make decisions. It's just like insight applied on the page. But when you can't optimize your offer that much, you definitely need to lean more on things like what we're going to talk about here today. Now, what you're going to see is largely with regards to recurring costs. That doesn't mean it's not true for non-recurring costs, but this is what we're going to be primarily talking about. MRR is monthly recurring revenue. ARR is annual recurring revenue. So we're just talking about recurring costs. All right, couple studies for you to take away. Go to your clients when your client's like, why should we do it this way? You'll want to have, one, the confidence that comes with knowing that this stuff has been studied. It's not just being done by some person on their website and then talked about like it's the only way to do it. This is studied in academic settings, lots of rigor, etc. But people prefer to keep the most, not just more, but the most. So if I have to give something up, I prefer to keep as much as I possibly can. Interesting study here about quadruple results. So the sign-up rate to an app-based recurring savings deposit program, that's where it's like, it's an app, you're going to save more money by saving a little bit. Now, how much are we going to save, right? When the amount so the signups quadrupled when the amount that you were supposed to save was presented daily as opposed to monthly. So save $5 a day, sign up rate quadrupled when they said save $5 a day versus save $150 per month. Quadruple. Now, when you think about that, these small things that as conversion copywriters, now the average copywriter doesn't think about this. Conversion copywriters come in and we're like, we can actually apply some of these like really basic principles that someone at a conversion consultancy will also keep like in their pocket to pull out and act all like, ooh, look at me. But we can do that thing too, because this is what we do. We get people to say yes to things. And if you want to increase sign-up rates for something like this, if you had a client who was doing anything like this, imagine if you were to help them quadruple their signups just by making a change to help, knowing that people prefer to keep the most. If they're doing $150 per month as save this much, and you can save $5 per day and get more signups, you just added a lot of value to your client by optimizing the positioning or framing of the offer, list, offer, copy. Okay, another example, likelihood of donation increased when the donation appeal, how much you have to donate every day versus every year, when it was down to periodic terms. So $1 a day versus $3.50 a year. Again, a lot of people will look at this and go like, yeah, obviously. But how many of us still let our clients go with the $350 a year or $30 a month, or whatever it might be, when instead we've seen again and again that these small, seemingly obvious changes actually help people make a decision. And we're going to talk about what kinds of people. Now, that was talking about keeping the most. What about getting, right? What about the outcomes, the benefits? So 2009, 11 years ago, people were still humans though. So in 2009, movie packages were presented as A, get 468 movies instead of 364 movies a year. Oh, ABD means and. Or B, get 9 movies versus 7 movies a week. So consumers preferred A. All they had to do, they were still going to get 9 movies a week, but they wanted to get 468 movies a year. So this is in the aggregate versus in the periodic, where before we were seeing that periodic worked better. And we're going to get into exactly what that means, but let's still go through the studies. Again, getting the most. In 2016, very, very recent, a study found that people were more likely to depend on an annuity plan for retirement when that was presented as you're going to get $100,000 over the course of your retirement instead of you're going to get $500 a month over the course of your retirement. They're still going to only get $500 a month over the course of their retirement, but over the course of their retirement overall, they get 100,000. They prefer that. Not too shocking, is it? But what is really going on here? What's the takeaway? What can you say, like, checklist time when I'm optimizing an offer, or when I'm doing a heuristic analysis of what my client has in place in their email, on their sales page, even in their ads? What can I do? When framing outcomes, do it in aggregate terms. And that means what happens after a long period of time. So we want to say an outcome is lose 120 pounds a year, not lose 10 pounds a month, and definitely not lose 0.3 pounds in a day. You might know that, but it can be easy to flip this around and forget the times when aggregate works better than periodic and when periodic works better than aggregate. So framing outcomes, if it's an outcome, do it in aggregate. If it is something that they have to give up, a price, an investment, then we want to do so in periodic terms, and ideally framing it down to its smallest unit of measure. So $1.67 a day instead of $50 a month, or $600 a year. And this was part of an example that came from a study on savings. $600 a year, too big. There's a lot of money there. $50 versus $1.67. That's a more manageable amount. I'm going to keep the most versus in the other one around outcomes. Okay. That's the whole lesson today. And I just want to keep in mind here, we get a lot of questions like, oh, what about my unique audience? Like, but my people make decisions differently. Or we've tried this and CFOs don't respond to that, or engineers don't respond to that, or single moms don't respond to that, or might not respond to that. And you haven't actually tried it at all. So this is why we teach human decision making rather than how do you convince a CTO? They're still a human. When it comes down to it, they're still going to make decisions in the same way. They've evolved the same way. So we can still apply the same things, knowing that there will always be exceptions. There will always be some people who do the math and go, wait, 1 out of 10 is 10%, and 9 out of 100 is 9%. So I want this one. Those people will always exist. But the vast majority of people are just making rapid fire decisions when we get down to a point. Now, what's also very important here is we're talking about offers. So once a person's at the point of an offer, they're more open to promotions. They're more open to, now give me shortcuts for making this decision so that I can just say yes. And that's why reducing price goes a long way at that point, like really clear things that are like, oh, that made my decision super duper easy. So we need to keep in mind that fast emotional decision makers are generally more attracted to those periodic costs and aggregated benefits. If you are trying to convince somebody who is a slower, more logical decision maker, this might not work as well on them. But when we think of the 4 decision-making modalities, we're really talking about 3 out of 4 of those decision makers. When we're at the point of actually trying to close them, they are more likely to be attracted to periodic costs and aggregated benefits. Now, also keep in mind, things are bigger than this, right? Like we talked about numerosity effect. We talked about the whole thing's temporal framing. And along the way there, you're probably thinking things like loss aversion and other types of framing that we might do, context effect, contrast effect, all of these sorts of things all play in there too, right? So you don't make decisions without lots of other things, effects, biases, things like that also getting in the way. So keep in mind that in addition to what you've seen today, a person's goals will also affect this. So if they're very goal oriented, or you're matching your offer with a goal that they've clearly stated, that will also impact how what you just learned today works, how much attention they actually pay to background information, like context of the decision making, their comfort with calculations. So if they are quite analytical, then they're more likely to look at 1 out of 10 and go like, that one, I want those odds instead. So you have to keep all of those things in mind. But overall, we're always talking about how humans make decisions as a starting point. Don't throw it out because maybe you would have chosen B and A, everybody else chose, and you're like, well, this can't be true. This is how people make decisions. We start here, and then we layer on more insights into how they get to that final point of yes. Now, it is your turn. I think that the most interesting thing you can do when you see studies and you see things like, okay, benefits in aggregate, price in periodic terms, when you know that, now you can go apply it. So this is a point where I would encourage you to think about a client or a project that you have on the go. Think about those final emails that you write in a launch sequence or in a campaign, or when you get to the bottom of a sales page. How can you frame results and price using what you know now? How can you change what you were maybe already working on, or go back and optimize something that you wrote based on what you know now? We feel extra nerdy now? I feel nerdy.
So nerdy, but it's like good nerding out for sure.
Have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, wear a mask, all that good stuff. Bye, y'all.
Bye.